This is RamView.
It's hot out there, but let's blow them off the line of scrimmage. Headline, Los Angeles.
Live from the RamCave, I'm Joe Tarosian, and this is RamView, the January 8th, 2025 edition, brought to you by Kistler Law Firm. Injured in an auto accident? Need help? Got questions? Call Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. That's Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. And check out KistlerLawFirm.com. That's one word, KistlerLawFirm.com. Kistler Law, they've been fighting for you since 92. And by Temple City Auto Repair. Having some auto issues? Get yourself some John and Henry at TempleCityAutoRepair.com. And of course, by Bench the app. Don't take a zero. Don't get a goose egg on your fantasy team because you left a non-starting player in the lineup. Download Bench the app today. Make that a thing of the past and dominate and win. I won the San Luis Obispo Bench the app developers fantasy football league this year. My first year in the league. So smoke them. On smoke's probably not the best word to use right now. I'm kind of stay away from a little bit of the cuteness today. We've got fires all around us. I've got ash raining down. So just to give a quick update here, I know you guys are here for football. You can go to someplace else to get updates, but a lot of you have been gracious enough to check on me and check on my family and ask how we're doing. We're doing fine. We're doing good. The fires are not in a place where they're going to touch us. We're not in the foothills. We're not near Palisades. And we're in the San Gabriel Valley where everything's concrete with a little bit of green and a little bit of tree. So we're pretty safe here in Temple City. Can see everything, the San Gabriel Mountains where they're burning right now. And so it looks much closer. And that's the thing about LA that I know most of you know, but some people that haven't been here kind of forget. This area is huge. When the Rodney King riots happened all those years ago, you could smell the smoke at our apartment. My wife and I, when we first got married, we could smell the smoke coming in, but none of that stuff was anywhere near us. LA is so big. When the Northridge quake happened out in the San Fernando Valley, freeways were collapsing and people were dying. In the San Gabriel Valley where I live, our biggest disruption during the Northridge quake was we couldn't use our ATM at Coco's to pay for breakfast. I mean, it's a huge area. And but there's 4 fires going, which does at least distribute a lot of ash. And the other component to that, along with the fires, is the wind. In 2011, we had a really serious windstorm here, and Temple City, my house, my area, was ground zero. All the power poles fell for about a mile stretch. They fell right in front of our house. Our roads were impassable. We were without power for over a week. And that was as violent a storm as we ever had. It's like once in a century storm. And that storm was worse than we had last night, but last night was pretty bad. And we were dodging palm fronds that were sailing through the air like missiles and ducking behind cars as we were trying to get everything battened down before everything got crazy. And in the process it was so loud sometimes it kind of stopped our conversation inside the house. And we expected to lose power, but we never did. Some of our neighbors around the corner lost power. One home had a tree go into it. And then friends in Monrovia, the guys I work with at Mid-Valley Sports, Tim Peterson, he lost his power. Friends that live in the foothills outside of Monrovia, friends in Altadena, Pasadena, Hastings Ranch, all those foothill areas had to be evacuated. But we were pretty blessed in the sense that our biggest issue was the wind last night and the light, how would I call it? The steady drizzle of ash and dust. So sorry to drag it on so long, but a lot of you have been asking, and I'm going to keep it kind of sober tonight a little bit. I'm just going to go through the stuff that I prepped, and you guys can fire all the questions for Monday's game, and we'll talk a lot about it. I see you guys there, Steve Ramirez, Tim Burns, and I'll get to you guys in a second. Just looking up some of my Rams Viking history. I'm glad you're here, Steve. I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Rams beat the Vikings in 2018 and went to the Super Bowl. Rams beat the Vikings in 2021 and went to the Super Bowl. And they've beaten the Vikings this year. Kind of gives you some thought, right? The Rams beat the Vikings in 1999 in the playoffs and went to the Super Bowl. Rams beat the Vikings in 1979 in overtime. I think it was the field goal by Cromwell, and ended up going to the Super Bowl. The only time the Rams went to the Super Bowl that they didn't beat the Vikings was in 2001, and that was the year the Vikings went 5-11 under Mike Tice. Interesting enough, though, in 78, the Rams beat them in the playoffs. They didn't go to the Super Bowl that year. They should have beat the Cowboys, but they didn't. And then in 74, they should have beat the Vikings. They didn't go to the Super Bowl. 76, they should have beat the Vikings, and they didn't. Would have gone to the Super Bowl. In 77, of course, was the Mud Bowl, and I'm going to say my Rams would have beaten the Cowboys in the 77 conference finals if they had gotten a shot. But we lost to the Vikings in 77. And then, of course, we lost to the Vikings in 69. That's the heartbreaker for my sports writer friend, colleague there, Steve Ramirez. If the Rams had beaten the Vikings in 69 in the playoffs, they would have played the Browns the following week. And that was a diminishing Brown team. And I think the Rams would have beat them and faced the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And I think the Rams probably would have given the Chiefs a better game than the Vikings did. That would have been an awesome, different kind of history if the Rams had made it to Super Bowl IV. But I thought I'd get that out there, is that Super Bowl runs by the Rams often include a path through the Vikings. And so anxious to see that. Something to think about in terms of the Week 8 victory. In that game, Kyren Williams ran for 97 yards. We still had Bo Limmer playing at center. Now we feel much more comfortable with him. But we were running undrafted free agent Justin Diedick at left guard in that game. Puka had come back. Darius Williams had come back, but we didn't have Steve Avila yet. And yet the Rams were able to move the ball on the ground. Also, Justin Jefferson, I think, caught 8 passes that game. I think he caught 5 of them in the first quarter. I'd have to go back and check my notes. I think he only caught 1 in the second half, nothing in the third. And he was not a factor. Jordan Addison was only targeted 3 times, and he only caught 2 passes. Meanwhile, Puka gave them fits quite a bit there, and that was one of we saw Stafford do a lot of moving around. Something to think about here. We're going to break this down again on the other side of the break, but the Vikings have 11 wins this year. Again, out of 14, 11 of them have come against non-playoff teams. They're 14-3, but 11 of those are against non-playoff teams. They have 2 against the Packers and 1 against the Texans, and those teams are hardly, how we could say, high-end Super Bowl contenders right now. My issue here, before I go to look at some questions here with you guys and check in with you guys, here is I'm kind of curious why the Rams are considered underdogs at home, knowing they've beaten the Vikings. And when you look at the Vikings schedule and who they've beaten, I'm thinking, I don't know if the Rams are really underdogs. And I know they'll call it an upset, but I don't know it would be an upset when the Rams beat them. And I think the Rams will beat them. I'm leaning heavily Ram on this, and we'll, again, give reasons why on the other side. So, cool. I do appreciate you guys joining us. Steve Ramirez, Tim Burns, thank you for being here. Tim Burns, be safe, Ramley. Joe T, you always have a place to stay. Slight travel time. Thank you. I appreciate that. Steve Ramirez, my Westdale Bears also won a fantasy league. Westdale Bears, is that where Greg Brady played before he got that little hip injury, that little rib injury? Tim Burns, how's the smoke hampering team prep for Monday? Well, I got that they didn't have practice scheduled for today, and they do not have an indoor facility because it's LA. So I'm not sure what they're going to do. The advantage here, though, is the game's on Monday. So you get that extra day to decide things. And so I'm not sure what's going to happen. Tim Burns, I think people need to quit giving up on Kupp. Switching the youngsters in for him is contrary to every coach mantra. He is a playoff MVP. You play experience. Okay, I saw a link to that. Was that Rams Wire? Was that Ramblin' Rams, Turf Show Times? There was a link that the Rams need to make a drastic move about Kupp and maybe like benching him. And yeah, I didn't think much of that one either.
That is incredibly jejune.
Yes, I thought it was just, again, guys, every one of you here right now probably have just as much football knowledge as anybody on some of these websites that's getting paid to write. I got to tell you, it's true. some of us, just maybe some, Steve, and what I did in my life, maybe we've had the ability to articulate it a little bit better, but people going with that, let's bench Cup for who? You know, we're going to bench him for Tutu. We're going to bench him for Jordan. The time is coming. We know Cup is slipping down. But wasn't it a couple weeks ago where the touchdown catch, was it against Buffalo? He made that catch, and everyone was in love with Cooper. And so give it time. Let it play out. You're not going to get the intangibles from all those other guys. Maybe Cup has lost a step. But one, he's a professional out of Eastern Washington. He's not sulking. He is not sulking. He's winding down. That body is not bouncing back maybe the way he wants it to bounce back. And note to Stan Kroenke, frick, dude, you're the richest owner in the world. The technology is there. I don't want to hear shows being at SoFi. Why don't you put in some natural grass at SoFi? The technology's there to do that. Get this thing done. Stop beating up your players. And Cup would be a guy like that. So, yeah, I've seen some of those links. I haven't clicked on. Steve Ramirez, Rams-Browns game would have been at the Coliseum. And the Browns were an inferior team. Wouldn't you agree, Steve? That year in 69? Maybe, towards the end there, we know what the Rams were going through, the 3 losses at the end of the regular season. And, of course, we saw what happened in Minnesota, but they were up in Minnesota. So I think the Rams would have beaten them. I'd love to. I've got this idea of I want to write a bunch of what-if short stories. What if the Rams were in Super Bowl 4? What if Roman Gabriel was the Rams' third-string quarterback and quarterback coach hybrid in the 78 season? And what if Roman Gabriel replaced Pat Hayden in the 78 championship game? And what if Roman Gabriel led the Rams to a victory in that game? What if, Eddie Brown, or Nolan Cromwell held on to the pick 6 in the Rams? How would history change? And I've got a whole bunch of ideas in my head about doing stories like that. It's fun to do, but it's more off-season work than anything else. Tim Burns, what's the word on Johnson playing time? My belief is, from everything I've seen, just when I'm assessing here, I don't think he's going to get a lot of playing time. Kitchens is playing well. Curl is playing well. Maybe in some high leverage situations, maybe Johnny runs a little bit faster than Jalen McCullough, but McCullough's playing well. The Rams safety room is deep. What we're getting from JJ is a lot of experience and some very comforting depth, right? It's like having a great stew. All you need when you got the stew is the stew. But then someone shows up with some really good bread to kind of accessorize it a little bit. And that's what JJ is. I'm happy he's back. And I look forward to having him around. It's just a good safety net. And again, I could talk about this later. I talked about it on Monday, is look at where the Rams are depth-wise. We feel really good about Jimmy G. We got Stafford starting. We have to feel really good about the offensive line in terms of Limmer's the outlier, but Jonah Jackson played well. Warren McClendon played well at right tackle, and Joe Noteboom played well at left tackle. Okay, serviceable at left tackle. Now, is Noteboom being paid too much? Yeah. I think maybe what's hurting Noteboom, probably the fact is that he just hasn't been locked in at left tackle. Now, he lost the job to Alaric Jackson. That's all good, but I think he would look a lot less incompetent to us as fans if he was just a one-position player and not the utility guy that's moving up and down the line like we always move him and such. So that's where I would feel about Noteboom right now. But all 3 of those guys, Noteboom, right? McClendon, Jonah Jackson, there's depth right here for the Rams, and this is a good thing to see. And then, of course, the safety room, there's depth there. The defensive line is healthy. Gallimore, DeJuan Johnson, these are depth pieces. And so this is exciting right now. Okay, let's see here. Steve Ramirez. Yes, my team is named after the Brady Bunch High School. I always name my teams after a fictional team. Okay, well, I can say my fantasy team in the San Luis Obispo League was the West El Monte Fighting Scots. There you go. So they were my name of my fantasy team. Bill, it seems like every time the Rams get the first, they lose. Get the first, they lose. Can you explain that one to me, Bill? I know it's probably obvious, and I'm just blanking. It seems like every time the Rams get the first, they lose. Let me know, Chief, and we'll go on from there. Okay, let's look at around the NFL and other places. Would I hire John Gruden to be my head coach these days? No, I wouldn't. I think I don't think he's a good talent evaluator, and he wants that kind of control. I think he's a good coach. I think he's the one that got the Buccaneers over the top, but he didn't build that roster. And the more control he got, they became much more mediocre. I think we saw that in his first couple of years there with the Raiders. I think he was railroaded by the NFL. And such amazing. They go through 700,000 emails, whatever number of emails they did, and John Gruden's the only one that made questionable remarks. So with all that said, I still wouldn't hire him as my head coach. But if I was an owner and I just had that what they call blank you money that I didn't care, I would hire him to upset the KBM, which is pastel for the Marxist brigade in sports journalism, because of their recent and very expected rant about black coaches and Rand Carthon being fired by Tennessee and implying racism.
That is incredibly jejune.
Yes, there's a whole circle list here that's being reposted all across social media right now that says Antonio Pierce fired after one season, Jared Mayo fired after one season, Lovie Smith fired after one season, David Culley fired after one season, Steve Wilkes fired after one season, Rand Carthon fired after one season, and it's supposed to be after 2 seasons as GM, and we're supposed to go, oh my God, it's racism. And I think Steve Weish, NFL Network, did it, and these guys are just jackwagons, right? They think they're crusaders. Actually, they're dolts for Marxist ideology. And I know you're thinking, Joe, what are you talking about? The KBM, the Kiss Butt Media, advances a Marxist ideology, and what I mean by that is divide, and create issues. Conveniently, as all these crusaders now are talking about black coaches being fired, which is kind of interesting because it's racism that got them fired. Was it racism that got them hired? And then they conveniently forget, as many people pointed, this went through my head as I read it. I didn't comment, but other people posted, they gave a whole list. Urban Meyer fired in season. Nate Hackett fired in season. Frank Wright fired in season. Mike Mularkey fired after one season. Rob Chudzinski, Browns, fired after one season. Chip Kelly fired after one season. Jim Tomasula, Jim Mora Jr. fired after one season. And if you remember the Texans, who even Colin Cowherd, kept on calling their organization, kind of wonky and maybe racist and all these things. He implied it because he went along with the KBM. Everyone forgets the Texans had Romeo Crennel finish out the 2020 season, and he was replaced by David Culley, African-American, who was replaced by Lovie Smith, African-American, who was replaced by D'Amico Ryans, African-American. So who are the racist owners again? Let's also remember Brian Flores, after 2 years in Miami, was fired by their GM, Chris Greer, who is African-American. Let's also remember that Matt Eberflus was fired this year by Ryan Poles, an African-American GM. And Thomas Brown is the interim coach, and they're going to give him a cursory interview. But do you really think Ryan Poles is going to hire an African-American named Thomas Brown to be his head coach? No, I don't think so. Kevin O'Connell of the Vikings, the former Ram OC, was hired by Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. He's the general manager of the Minnesota Vikings, and you guessed it, right? So no one plays this card. No one does this stuff anymore except the media. When you've seen them try to bait Marcus Freeman in the college football playoff into going into this. You see them constantly trying to bait Todd Bowles into this kind of stuff. And we're going to talk about Todd Bowles here in a second. You realize that the KBM is losing its hold on this issue. This issue, no one cares about this issue. Everyone is seeing this issue. It's only the KBM and their underlying subconscious, maybe, but Marxist ideology that is always about dividing and creating issues. Note to the KBM, the Kiss Butt Media, you suck. And that's why a small show like this has a niche. And that's why other places and other shows on the internet have niches, because you suck. You just do. So raise your head out of the bubble. For the record, Robert Saleh, Dennis Allen, and Matt Eberflus were fired in season. Since we met, Gerard Mayo, Doug Peterson in Jacksonville, and Antonio Pierce have been canned. I was surprised by Antonio Pierce a little bit. They played hard. They did. The Raiders played hard under him. I get it in the sense that, hey, you think you want to move on, but I don't know if I was kind of thinking for the Raiders' sake, they would hold on to Antonio Pierce for a couple years and Telesco would just kind of fill that roster out with talent. And then if he's not the guy that can get you past 9 wins, then you make a move. But for stability, I would have kept Antonio Pierce. But then again, it's the Raiders. Gerard Mayo, if I can go back to a show I had, I think at the beginning of the season, and you saw how bad New England looked. He's not a head coach, man. He's just not a head coach. You saw that. Everyone saw that. So anyway, there we go. Going forward, I think the Rams are going to have a great relationship with the Seahawks going forward. Head coach Mike McDonald has said he wants Geno Smith back. And that is marvelous news to Rams fans. Marvelous news to Rams fans because we know what Geno is and we know what Geno Smith is capable of. And we also know what Geno Smith cannot do, right? He'll rack up some numbers. He'll get some high caloric intake, beating teams like, Jacksonville. But when it counts and it matters most, it won't. Geno's a 44.5 rock cap hit next year for the Seahawks. If they got rid of him, his dead cap number is 13. But the Seahawks have committed to Geno Smith, at least publicly. Mike McDonald has. And they've already fired offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb, who was the genius at the University of Washington in 2023. A lot of people think Ryan Grubb's going to find his way to Alabama. Speaking of coaches and their history, I get the sense if you heard Ryan Fitzpatrick's comment the last couple of days, I think it came out yesterday, Ryan Fitzpatrick and his comments about Brian Flores and his ego trip and his demeanor and his mannerisms while playing in Miami. I'm guessing Ryan Fitzpatrick and Brian Flores did not exchange gifts or cards this Christmas season. Finally here, looking at the Vikings have swapped out former Ram quarterback Brett Rippon. How far we've come from Brett Rippon to Carson Wentz to Jimmy G, right? There you go. And they've swapped him out for Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is their emergency quarterback in Minnesota. So good for them. And there they go. All right, playoffs. Couple of notes here I want to get into before we break down the games. Last I heard, Jalen Hurts is practicing, so that's good news for Eagle fans. I don't understand why the Rams are the underdogs. And for the Taxskins, I know a lot of people like the Taxskins, but I'm leaning Tampa Baker in this one because I think the Taxskins just got to go through hell before they can get to heaven. And to quote Steve Miller there, and I just don't think it's their time just yet. And I think Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield are a good match. Todd Bowles is going to the playoffs for the 3rd straight season. He went his rookie or his first year. Now, of course, he was with the Jets. He went his first year in Tom Brady's last year in 2022. He was 8-9, lost to the Cowboys. He went last year, won a playoff game. I think they beat the Eagles, and he's back this year. Todd Bowles does not get the respect he deserves. And whatever he's doing down there and how he's doing it, you see a pro's pro, right? You see a pro's pro. So congratulations to Todd Bowles. And I think the Buccaneers are going to beat the Taxskins this week. And finally, just looking at the Rams again, all that glitters is not gold or purple when you look at what the Vikings are. Looking at the AFC right now, I think the Bills will win. I think the Ravens will win. But will I be surprised if the Bills or Ravens get upset? No, I will not. Will a Charger victory in Houston surprise me? No, it will not, right? And, of course, that would mean the Steelers can beat the Ravens. Worst, everyone's calling this one a blowout. Should be, but you're playing a division rival for the 3rd time in the same year. You're playing a team that you play every year, twice. The Steelers know the Ravens. The Steelers know the Ravens. My feeling is if the Steelers lose this game, it's going to be because of some offensive failure, and it's going to be like 17-10. Some turnover or something happens. But then again, you never know, right? You never know. And it is the Ravens, and it is Lamar Jackson in the postseason. Just saying there. All right, I'm Joe Terosian, a sports writer for 21 years, and now I do RamView thanks to our sponsors at Kistler Law and their support. And we do appreciate that, and we do appreciate you guys buying my books. My book, Tangent Dreams, is on Amazon. Good seller. Please check it out. We don't hide behind a Patreon account or a paywall. You support us here. It allows me to do this, and it keeps me employed in my day job. My day job is I pastor a small church in Burbank called Burbank Faith Nazarene. You can find us here on YouTube at Burbank Faith Virtual, burbankfaithvirtual.com, and Burbank all across social media. So I appreciate that. And just another reminder, guys, thank you for checking on us. We're safe. We're good. We're not in the fire zone. We were in the windstorm last night, but everything's settled down right now. It's all of our neighbors in the foothills that are living the nightmare of evacuation, and some have lost their homes. And we're just dealing with ash. We're just dealing with a little bit of ash here. So we got our power, obviously. But thank you for checking on us. Let's look and see what questions we have right now. And here we go. Let's see. Burns, Mayo showed whom he is. I didn't like him. I thought he was miscast. You watch that offense and everything that was going on there, and that defense. They were just. Did he have any talent? No, there was no talent there. But Antonio Pierce, who I'm surprised was fired, he didn't have any talent either. They kept playing hard, right? When the Saints were out of it, they kept playing hard for was it Rizzo, their interim coach. And I didn't think the Patriots kept playing hard. I didn't. I think Drake May was lifting them quite a bit. Let's see, Bill. It seems like every time the Rams get the ball first, they lose. Okay. I see what you mean, Bill. I haven't put that together. Only thing I really am aware of is that Chris Shula does make adjustments, but it's like we take a beating on the first series or two. And if you remember the Viking game, I think the first two possessions for both teams ended up in touchdowns, and they just moved themselves up and down the field. And then they put the screws to them. And, like I said, I think Justin Jefferson had 5 catches in the first quarter, and then he didn't do much after that. And so I've kind of come to the point where I'm expecting that. I'm living with that right now. So I haven't thought so much about the slow starts, but I'm going to go back and rewatch when the season's over, and I'm going to follow up on that, Bill. That's a good point. Let's see here. Let's see. Boom, 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 boom. Bill, do you think the Rams will activate Freeman on Monday? I don't know. I don't think so. I think they kind of like it. We'll see. They've kept Schrader all season on the active roster. They just haven't dressed him out. And then they got Ronnie Rivers, and I think they're confident in Ronnie Rivers. So I think Royce Freeman is strictly an emergency type of deal. Bill, which road teams are winning this weekend? Oh, brother, you read my thoughts. I'm going to scroll down here, Bill, and I did. I've got the Chargers winning on the road, and that's all. I think the Steelers can pull an upset, but I've picked the Ravens. I picked the Bills. That was an easy one. I'm rooting for the Packers. Texans could pull something off, but I'm thinking the Buccaneers, and then, of course, I'm thinking the Rams. The Chargers, to me, seem like the team best capable of pulling off a road win this week. That's for sure. So, yeah, good call there, Bill. You're reading my mind. Steve Ramirez, last I heard, Rams are now a half-point favorite as of Tuesday. Oh, okay. There you go. Thanks, Steve. Onene Vangasham, our Rams defense will carry us all the way to the Super Bowl 59. Hey, I'll tell you what. The defense is playing well enough to get you advanced in the playoffs. I firmly believe that. If the offense was a little bit better, I think you're absolutely spot on it. I think it's good enough. Bill, isn't there an indoor facility the Rams can practice at? You would think they would find a way to go somewhere. Heck, Kroenke owns SoFi. I know the sides are open and all that kind of stuff, but seems like you'd be able to work out there, couldn't you? I don't know. Michael Negretti, hola, Pastor Joe. Do you live near any of the fires? Be safe, Pastor Joe. I'm not in the foothills. I'm a little more towards the flatlands of the San Gabriel Valley, but I can see the San Gabriel Mountains. They're a mile or two away. I've got friends up there in the foothills up there that are battling all this, but we are very safe. We just get the ash. Tim Burns, I have to say Rodgers is still a starter. He is going to give a strong year to someone other than the Jets. You just got to roll the dice with him. One, I want to see how he does with a head coach who doesn't take any garbage, right? Saleh wasn't strong personally, right? I know people are speaking well about him right now. Rodgers, he played well towards the end of the season. He looked good at times against the Rams. But man, I got it in my head when Saleh wanted to give him a hug and he pushed Saleh back. You know what, man? That's you're coming to my office and I'm going to rip you a new one, because it wasn't just about embarrassing his coach. It was a horrible message to his teammates. And I know I saw an interview today. They say where his teammates love him. I don't give a rip if his teammates love him or not. Either I lead or I leave, right? And head coach has to lead. And we used to notice that all the time when I was working football. When you're covering high school football, you're on the sidelines. It's the best theater experience there is. And there are coaches you learn who control their sideline and other coaches who you learn that are controlled by their assistants. Their assistants are really in charge, and their coaches are just kind of figureheads because they got the degree and the teaching credential and they got the job. And they're weak. And then there are others that are just strong. And you got to be a strong coach. As long as Aaron Rodgers came in and knew I was the boss and he doesn't roll his eyes at you, I can't even begin to tell you, has someone who's had people under him. And maybe I don't think that's immaturity on my part, but I've had someone roll their eyes at me. I've had someone roll their eyes at me. You roll your eyes at me, it's over here, and it doesn't wash. And so that's my problem with Aaron Rodgers. He says he can be a good citizen, but I don't know. Can he be a good citizen? That's my problem with Aaron Rodgers. Tim Burns, the play calling script to start games has been horrible. You just never know, right? You never know. I'm not going to argue and say you're wrong, Chief. On an A, I don't know, Pastor Joe, if you could depend on the Chargers winning on the road this week. Put it this way. I don't need the Chargers to win like I needed them to win in Arizona earlier this year, and they let us down. I am not emotionally connected to the Chargers. I like Harbaugh. I like Herbert. But I'm not emotionally connected to them. Anytime you depend on the Chargers, they're going to let you down, right? They're like Texas in college football. Don't count on them. They will let you down. But I don't think the Ravens are playing well. And I don't, I got to see something out of CJ Stroud and get those images of him bawling on national TV on that Saturday a couple of weeks ago out of my head and know that he's got the alpha in him to get the job done. And I know people are thinking, oh man, that's an old man's take. That's a boomer take. That's a get off my lawn take. Well, sorry, those get off my lawn guys, they built the world, right? Do you think any of the recent generations built the country we live in? No, they haven't. Have they built the culture? No, they built a weak culture. And what we perceive as strength is being diminished. And CJ Stroud emulated that Saturday. And I don't know if he's tough enough right now. I don't know if he's tough enough to face that. We know Herbert is, and we know Harbaugh and the nature of his teams are. And so if he can overcome some of that bad Spanos, mojo, juju stuff, then I think that's the one game that I think the Steelers could upset the Ravens. I definitely think that's possible. The one where, but I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying the Chargers should beat the Texans. They should. And if they lose, it shouldn't be, oh, we lost to a division champion. No, it means you lost to an inferior team, and they should be upset, which is what the Chargers usually do. But Harbaugh maybe can be the difference this time around. Let's see. Bill, do you think the Dan Campbell comments about seeing the Lions in 2 weeks will motivate the Rams? I hope not. I don't even care about the Lions right now. I hope the Rams would be professional enough to know that their business is with Minnesota. I think Dan Campbell was trying to show respect to an opponent. I think that's what he was trying to do. I didn't take it necessarily as a slight to the Rams. I think he was trying to show respect to the Vikings, who's his in-division rival. I hope the Rams would be mature enough or know not to do that, to give too much thought to that. That was a joke, Pastor Joe, a joke. Hey, the Chargers ticked me off a couple times this year on an A. I'm just speaking my heart. Tim Burns, if I pick the Chargers, they will lose. That's what happens, right? Yep, with you, Tim. That's what happens, to trust the Chargers. I get it. On an A, yes, AMS, Quentin Lake spoke on that. Yeah. CJ Stroud is no Seth Maxwell. Absolutely not. CJ Stroud is not Seth Maxwell. I mean, Seth Maxwell shut down his best friend, and he says, I ain't got time for that, boo, right? Go to the bench, man. Just be ready, right? He doesn't even bother wasting with his good friend, right? After the game, we're friends again. Right now, I'm in the huddle, and I got to tell Joe Bob that we all hurt. Absolutely on Seth Maxwell. There you go. Good job, Steve. College football, Orange Bowl tomorrow, Notre Dame versus Penn State. You know what? I'm going to be happy with whoever comes out. I like Penn State in the sense that I love the state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is so beautiful. Notre Dame, I like Marcus Freeman. These are not traditional powers that I would root for. Ohio State versus Texas on Friday, Cotton Bowl. You know, you'd like to think that Sarkisian and the Longhorns could nut it up to play in the Cotton Bowl, which is the old Southwest Conference prize, and they would say, no, it's called the Cotton Bowl. We are not losing the Cotton Bowl to a bunch of Buckeyes. And so I'm rooting for Texas, but Texas is like the Chargers, right? You can't count on them. I just don't want Ohio State to win. I just don't. Like I said, if Ohio State played the Russians, I'd be rooting for the Russians. Putin at quarterback, Brezhnev at tight end, Khrushchev in the backfield, you know, I would be rooting for those guys, right? Lenin going deep, you know, Stalin at left tackle. That's what I would be doing because I can't stand Ohio State. Rams 2025 opponents have been finalized. Not their schedule, just their opponents. Of course, away, the Rams have the Seahawks, 49ers, Cardinals as always. But look at the schedule. Away games, Saints, Buccaneers, Texans, Colts, Lions. Buccaneers are getting better, but we're going to see what the offseason looks like for them. Texans they're going to have to do some straightening up there. And then you got the Colts who got quarterback issues and the Lions who are going to be a powerhouse. That's not a daunting schedule. Home, Seahawks, 49ers, Cardinals, we know that. Panthers, who've played better, but you know, I think Bryce Young is going to have to do it at the start of a season. I feel there's a little fool's gold there down the stretch with his performances, but we'll see. Falcons, we'll see. That game's at home. That's winnable. Jaguars, winnable. Titans, winnable. We'll see where the Eagles are at after another year. And then the Ravens, that's a tough one. But I think there's only like 5 playoff teams on the Rams 17-game schedule next year. Now, that's who they're playing. We don't know in what order they're playing. But I do like the idea of Saints, again, that's indoor. Buccaneers, that's Florida. Texans, indoor. Colts, indoor. Lions, indoor. That means, excuse me, there's no outdoor East Coast games next year. You're not looking at that East Coast, New York, Washington, Carolina, New England, Buffalo, 10 a.m. start time in cold weather. So that's a favorable schedule for the Rams. Okay, looking at the Vikings. Last year, the Vikings were 7-10. This year, they're 14-3. The biggest additions were, Sam Darnold, which no one expected. I made a note there that I didn't think Sam Darnold was going to be, around long, but Sam Darnold's had a great year. Aaron Jones showed he had more on the tank than possible. They let Daniel Hunter walk, and then they got better going after the quarterback. Jonathan Greenard, he signed from Houston after Hunter went to Houston. Greenard had 11 sacks. Connor Van Ginkel, the former Dolphin, had 12 sacks. The surprising disappointment was Dallas Turner. Dallas Turner only had 3 sacks in only 302 snaps. Dallas Turner was who the Vikings chose at number 17 when they could have had Jared Verse, and they took Dallas Turner and left Verse for the Rams. Also, think about it. How different would the Bengals defense here if at 18 they took Jared Verse instead of Amarius Mims, right? And you could have had Trey Hendrickson and Jared Verse at the other edge. I think if that had been the case, the Bengals would have been in the playoffs. Regarding this, the PFF, they list the Vikings pass rush at number 25. I think it's better than that. They list the Rams pass rush at 10. I think it's slightly underwhelming. I think the Rams will be more about 8, but I'm not going to argue that one. The PFF grades the Vikings against the run at 5th overall in the league, Rams at 14. Now, that Vikings offensive line, which got a little bit exposed by Detroit, but Detroit was blitzing all over the place. If you remember, their starting left tackle, their standout left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, was lost for the season with a knee injury against the Rams. They replaced him with Cam Robinson at left tackle. Blake Brandel's in his first year as a starter at left guard. Garrett Bradbury's been there for a while, his first-round pick in 2018, and he's okay. He's not great. He's Limmer level, maybe just a little more experience. Dalton Reisner has been a free agent the last 2 years and a late signing both times. He had to replace Ed Ingram, who's their starting right guard. And then, of course, Brian O'Neill is their right tackle, and he's probably their best lineman right now. That is a okay offensive line, but it's not the Eagles' offensive line. It's not Detroit's offensive line. That's good for the Rams, right? Right now, the Vikings are listed 15th in pass protection. You know, you'd question that after that Detroit game. But here's what PFF grades, though. PFF grades the Rams 30th in pass protection, right? Stafford hasn't been sacked since week 13 in New Orleans. And in the last 10 games, he's only been sacked in 3 of those games. Think about that. The last 10 games, Stafford has only been sacked in 3 of those games. Twice against New Orleans, 4 times against Miami when we reinserted Jackson and Avila in and benched Limmer and Diedick after they had performed well, and then 5 times against Philly, which the Rams were never in that game. And but the Rams are graded 30th overall in pass protection, and their quarterback hasn't been sacked since November 13th. Okay, run blocking, the Rams, but the Vikings grade 14th. I look at this game and I just look at it and I look at it. I like our quarterback better. He's got a track record. Their receivers are probably better, but we also know what our receivers are capable of. You know, the Rams just have more talent. I think the Rams offensive line is better. I think we'll have the ability to get after Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold can move, but Sam Darnold is not like some of those other quarterbacks we've faced this year, and we've faced him. And this defense has consistently gotten better since the first weeks of the season to mid-season in week 8 when we played the Vikings to now. And so there's trouble there. And the Rams secondary didn't have a problem with Jefferson and Addison. And our safeties are playing better now. The room is deeper. So I do like the Rams quite a bit going forward here. When you look at the Vikings and who they drafted this year, J.J. McCarthy went out. I think Dallas Turner, he was drafted 17th overall. I think he's been, I'm not going to call him a bust, but he hasn't been great. And then, of course, you got Kyrie Jackson, who died, the Oregon cornerback, in a car accident. And Will Reichard, the kicker from Alabama, has struggled a little bit. So let's move on here. Let's see. We got some more questions come in. Yes, good point, Pastor Joe. Texans are like the Chargers. Okay, Texas is like the Chargers. The Century. All right, thanks, Century. Joe, I'm so glad I got to catch you live. Glad you could join us. I appreciate all your comments, Century. I really do. Question: your thoughts on Dan Campbell's comments on the Vikings, Coach? We'll see you in 2 weeks. I felt like he was just paying respect to the Vikings. That's what I felt. I don't know too often Dan Campbell. He says things that are very alpha, rah-rah for his team, but I haven't heard him disrespect an opponent unless I missed it. But that's what I took it as. He was trying to pay respect to the Vikings. And of course, you know, we go Jordan, right? We go Jordan. I'm taking any little thing where someone's sliding me. So that's how I viewed it. Maybe I'll have to watch it again. Bill, will the Rams finally get a Thanksgiving game against the Lions? I have no idea. I have no idea. You know, what is it, Steve? 1975 is the last time the Rams played a Thanksgiving game. That's a long time. Manuel Vasquez, PFF grades are ridiculous. I think they just scan through the games, not actually watch them. I think this year has been a really bad year. I don't know who they've hired or what they got going on, but it's been really disappointing. And again, what we talk about, if you follow the game, if you studied the game, if you played the game, if you've written in the game, if you've worked around the game, you don't have to dismiss what your eyes see because PFF says it's something different, right? Something's off there. Onane, our Rams will crush Dan Campbell in integrity. The comment he made to Coach Kevin O'Connell is, we'll see in 2 weeks what he meant by that. The Vikings will beat our Rams. Laugh out loud. And again, I don't know if it was personal there. I think he was just trying to pay respect. Tribe, Joe, as of now, it's still at SoFi, but they have a contingency plan to move the game because of those wildfires. Where would they move that to? Where would they move it? Down to Orange County somewhere? I'd be curious to know. Century, thank you, Joe. You rock. All right, thank you so much. Manuel Vasquez, Rams 31, Vikings 23. I haven't thought of a score yet, but I'm not going to argue against that. The Century 66. Good point, Joe. Haha. Yes. All right. Cool. My prediction: 80 yards TD. I'm going to say, I think you said years, but I'll say 80-yard TD to Bruce. There you go. All right. I'll take it. I'll take all of it. Yes. Yes. I think we did some damage. That Ram Viking playoff game back in '99 was pretty pretty interesting to watch. All right, let's look at some of the
It was a stone group, my man.
brief history stuff here. Not too much. Rams on this day in 1968 acquired a defensive back named Ron Smith from the Falcons, and he was a great punt returner. Had a nice career in the NFL, more as a punt returner than a defensive back, and he also ended up with the Chargers and the Raiders. On this date in 2001, the Rams hired Lovie Smith as a defensive coordinator. And I think it was just 1 year he was with the Rams, and we ended up going to the Super Bowl. Let's see. On this date in 2020, John Bones Fossil resigns as special teams coach after that long run with the Rams. Okay. On this day in 2021, former Ram linebacker, movie star, actor Mike Henry passed away at the age of 84. He was a USC linebacker, played a little bit with the Steelers, started a couple years with the Rams, then moved into Hollywood. He was in, unfortunately, he was in Smokey and the Bandit, but he was also in the Green Berets with John Wayne. And I think he played Tarzan a couple times. On this day, the Rams in 2005, Rams win a wild card game in Seattle, 27-20. Cam Cleland, 17-yard touchdown pass from Bulger with 2:11 to play. Yeah, that one was special. I remember I was watching it with my church guys, and they were Seattle fans, and it was a very special moment to stick it to those guys. All right, January 9th, 1969, George Allen officially rehired by Dan Reeves and the Rams after he was fired at the end of the 69 season. 1978, Chuck Knox resigns tomorrow. That's the anniversary of Chuck Knox's resignation. And it really kind of created all the chaos afterwards, right? From 78 on, it was all chaos with the Rams. Let's see here. 1991, tomorrow, Rams 33 years ago tomorrow, the Rams fired a bunch of assistant coaches. They fired DC Fritz Schumer. They fired Jairo Penaranda, special teams coach. They fired Larry Brooks, defensive line coach. And a week later, they hired Jeff Visser as DC. And future Hall of Famer Kevin Green, who had 13 sacks in 1990, with the arrival of Jeff Fisher and changing the scheme in 1991, Kevin Green goes from 13 sacks in 1990 to 3 sacks in 1991. Also, tomorrow is the 18th or the 19th anniversary of the passing of Jack Snow in 2006 at the age of 62. There we go. Oh, sorry. Last ad here. Tomorrow, 2021, is the anniversary of the Rams' 30-20 victory on a Saturday over the Seahawks. That was John Wolford got the start, got injured. Goff came in. Darius Williams had a pick six. Matt Gay, 3 field goals, and Robert Woods, a 15-yard touchdown pass from Goff. Time passes so fast. Unbelievable. Let's see here. BL, my prediction. Okay, good. I think we got it all in. I'll wait here, guys, for about a minute and a half, and we'll go from there. I hope you guys are safe. Everyone's asked about me. I don't know where a lot of you live. If you're out of state, if you're up north, I know Mr. Burns is up north, but I hope you guys are safe. It's funny because I got my office door open and I could feel on my desk here little minute pieces of ash that have kind of come in to my office here. So anyway, it's a different world sometimes. You forget that you're in Southern California. I will say, though, with all the smoke, the sunset looked great and everything. So, okay, guys, no more questions. I see you're out there. Please be sure to follow us on Spotify as we try to build our footprint there. Steve Ramirez in Hesperia. Good for you, Steve. But check us out on Spotify. It's called From the RamCave. It's the audio version of this show. So check us out there. And, of course, continue to buy the books, man. I can't tell you how much that really helps us and go from there. Growing the spikes. Vikes by 7 should be fun. Okay, we got a Viking fan. Thank you for joining us. Growing the spike. All right. Hey, let me ask you, Mr. Viking fan, real quick before I go. Those all-white unis. Those all-white unis with the white horn, all that white stuff for the Vikings, getting rid of purple in that game we saw a couple weeks ago. What was that all about? Person should have been fired. Let's see. On an A. Remember, Pastor Joe, I'm with you all the way. Super Bowl 59. Century 66. Joe, any idea who the last NFL player to play both offense and defense in the same game was? Well, I know Troy Brown did it a lot for the Patriots. I know early on, Julian Edelman did it for the Patriots. I was a Roy Green fan when he was with the Cardinals, and so he played defensive back and wide receiver at the same time. I know there's got to be somebody else, but Troy Brown, I really like Troy Brown, and Julian Edelman, who I liked until Super Bowl 53 and everything. But I think those guys went both ways. Century, I honestly don't know. Growing the spikes. Agreed. The horn needs to be purple. Yeah, something needs to be purple on the purple people eaters, right? It just has to be. It doesn't make sense if it's not purple, right? I'd like to ask Viking fan, and I hope, guys, please hit like and subscribe if you can. I'd like to ask Viking fan. I say it a lot. You guys, I feel like the Vikings sold part of their soul when they went indoors. I believe they would have been back to a Super Bowl since 1976. They would have been back to a Super Bowl if they held on to that natural climate advantage of playing in the cold. Because right now, the Vikings used to be a team I hated and feared, but ever since they moved indoors, you lost that advantage. And I know people like blowing the horn and doing the skull and all that kind of stuff. I guess it's cool, but man, that outdoor advantage, you really lost it there. Okay. Century, amazing, Joe. Thanks for that. Okay, cool. Steve Ramirez, I don't mind the all whites as long as the helmet is purple. Maybe there just got to be some purple in the Vikings uniform, right? There just got to be some purple. Okay, I gone after 50 minutes. Guys, you guys are amazing. Thank you for hanging with me. Thank you for sharing with me. And thank you for checking up on me. But we're good, and we'll be back Friday. Check out all those things from the RamCave on Spotify. I've also gone back to helping my friends out at Mid-Valley Sports a little bit. I'm just writing my column FanView there. I'll probably be posting a column there tomorrow, and we keep picking up and cleaning up with everything that's gone on. Century 66, thank goodness they went indoors. Exactly. Now I can just hate the Cowboys, right? God bless, guys. I wish I could stick around. Take care. Sign it. Subscribe it. We'll talk to you soon.